Hello, and thank you for joining our Fremont Unified School District Community Town Hall. Today's December 14th, 2021. I appreciate any of the staff that have taken the time to join us today, if they might be on their prep or another break during their workday. I appreciate any of the community that have joined in today, and perhaps any students as well. Today, we're going to go through a number of slides and provide a brief overview of things that are happening in Fremont Unified School District, things that have happened recently, and things that we are looking at in the near future as well. With that process, we'll be starting with introductions, then moving into some of the support for our students, some of our facilities work, a financial overview of Fremont Unified, and a discussion about how to join us at the end. Beginning with our Board of Education, they are not with us on this town hall today. But I do want to make sure that the introduction is provided. And as you may know, we vote to reorganize our Board of Education each year at the December meeting. So that reorganization has just recently taken place. Diane Jones is the new president of the Board of Education. Vivek Prasad is the new vice president for the Board of Education. Yajing Zhang is our trustee who was assigned to the role of clerk through the election process. And Trustee Desiree Campbell and Trustee Larry Sweeney also remain members of our board. And we are pleased to have our student board member, Tushar Dalmia. So board member Dalmia recently participated with many of the board members and myself in a California School Boards Association training in San Diego. And he did an excellent job representing Fremont Unified School District and the voice of students in the critical conversations around school districts and governance. Provide a brief introduction for our executive cabinet. They also will not be on today's town hall call because our executive team is busy in negotiations today. I myself, CJ Kamek, and superintendent for the district, and we have Nancy Torres Pfeiffer, our associate superintendent. Mrs. Leticia Salinas is our assistant superintendent of instructional services. And newly appointed, Mr. Zach Larson is our Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources. Many of you may know that Mr. Larson has been with Fremont Unified for over 20 years in various roles, from classroom teacher to principal to director of secondary education. And we're thrilled that he's been able to join us as a member of the executive cabinet in his recent appointment to Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources. Looking at Fremont Unified School District on a large scale, we're nearly 34,000 students. We remain one of the 25 largest districts in the entire state of California. We have almost 3,300 employees. And as you can see highlighted in front of you, Fremont Unified School District's mission is to provide equitable opportunities to educate, challenge, and inspire students. There is more to that mission statement. I'll leave that reading to you. As you do look at this slide, I'll remind you that if you'd like to see the presentation, it will be posted on our website along with the recording of this town hall and our town hall from last night as well. And this year, we were thrilled to reopen our schools. Instruction. We know that the pandemic has carried a large toll for a great number of people, and that the pandemic has not impacted everybody equitably. There's been various impacts based on circumstances, and so everybody's experience has not been the same. As we look at our return to campus after being closed for all of last year, we provided two options for students: a full return to in-person instruction. We also provided a virtual instructional model for students. And that is done through our VISTA program at the secondary level and through our elementary virtual academy at the elementary level. This year, as we started school, we had about 4 to 5%, that's again 4 students enroll in our virtual programs, and roughly 95% enrolling in full in-person instruction. I can understand why parents, guardians may have made choices on either side of that equation. But I want to thank our staff for all the work that they've done to make sure that our in-person instruction programs were ready and that the facilities were safe. A lot of work happened from our classified support staff, our SEIU and CSEA staff to make sure that facilities were ready And as you can see on the screen, we have a number of mitigation strategies in place from our comprehensive safety plan and all of the guidance from Alameda County Public Health and the California Department of Public Health. As you know, we are masking indoors and outdoors. We are using physical distancing when practicable. Now, that means that when we can, we will, but it's not conducive to the overall instructional environment in every circumstance. Also, we have testing availability in Fremont Unified School District. We are providing on-site PCR COVID tests for every school site and work location in Fremont Unified. And of course, we are reporting. We're reporting our positive cases on our website with a 14-day trend and a cumulative total to make sure that we're being transparent with our community. We are also reporting to Alameda County Public Health as required, and we're contacting anybody who may be considered a close contact for a positive case, as well as providing notice to the school community and the school staff when there is a positive case. Some of the questions that have come through for our town hall, I'll try and address as we move through the presentation. And so, for example, we had some questions come through regarding the reopening. One of the questions that came through last night was about the new state mandate for masking from December 15th through January 15th. That really will have no impact on Fremont Unified School operations because we've already been masking indoors and outdoors. So that masking criteria will not really have an impact for us on the school level. It's more about what's happening out within the community. Additionally, a request came forward to speak to if there is a regular cleaning or regular schedule for our custodial teams. And yes, there are regular schedules and regular cleaning, as well as regular cleaning of the restrooms. It is worth noting, as I shared in last night's town hall, that our focus is on cleaning the surfaces and disinfecting. And that may look a little bit different compared to pre-pandemic time. An example that I use in that conversation would be, it might mean that an area of carpet is vacuumed a little bit less per week and more time and energy is focused on the cleaning of high touch surfaces and the cleanliness of the surface environment. Let me just check in any other questions on that topic before we move to the next slide. And that is that we are back. And you can see from these slides the type of excitement and learning that's taking place. I've been thrilled to see how well our students are doing with adjusting to the new learning environment, whether it's my site visits to our preschool programs at Glankler, to our comprehensive high school settings, alternative school settings, or anywhere in between. Our students have been adjusting well to the mask requirements. I think they've been very responsible about the choices that they're making, and the staff has been supporting that as well. So I'm very grateful for the work that it's taken across the school district to get everybody back in person, and for the trust that is involved in that from our parent and guardian community, as well as our community at large. As we come back, we recognize that students have a need for more intensive support. In response to that, we planned a number of different things to make sure that we were addressing student needs. One of those was a multi-tiered system of support approach at the elementary level, which is something that is continuous work. It's not just a one-time adjustment. And if you're not familiar with MTSS, MTSS is a program that is about a wide range of things that create a structure for students. And we talk about tiers, tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. So tier 1 is something that's generally happening for all students in the school, or it's happening as a general part of the classroom environment or instruction. Tier 2 is for a smaller percentage of students and is more intensified. And then tier 3, an even smaller number of students and even more intensified support. When we look at MTSS, that can be both for academic development and support, as well as behavioral. So there are many components to MTSS, and I'm very grateful for the work that our staff is doing in leading that work and the work that's happening in our schools across the district at the elementary level. At the secondary level, we've been implementing restorative practices, and also we've been engaging in social emotional learning curriculum across the district. One of the great things that we were able to do with some of the one-time dollars we've received is increase counseling services, and that happened at the elementary level and in some cases at the secondary level. And also we have our cost referral process. Some questions that came from our community as I look down at my notes, my apologies, on this topic were related to what type of restorative practices training and curriculum are we using? We are using the training and curriculum provided by the International Institute for Restorative Practices. We offered all secondary teachers a 2-day training on the restorative practices before the school year started. Additional opportunities throughout the spring and the summer for those trainings. In regard to the SEL curriculum, we had a question come forward on what that curriculum might look like and are there measurements to demonstrate success with that. As a former classroom teacher and school site administrator, I can tell you that much of the information you see about the success of an SEL program is anecdotal. There are ways to track things that are happening from a discipline standpoint across the campus, which relate to something called PBIS, Positive Behavior Intervention Systems. And that is something that we have in place as well. But again, there can be anecdotal information as well. And that's based on how you're seeing students responding to conflict, how you're seeing students resolve problems, and also how you're seeing students deal with the many emotions that they're having in light of coming out of distance learning, dealing with the stress of a pandemic. And so this has been something that the curriculum program went through our instructional committee, and we're very excited to have this in place. Lastly, as we talk about the return to campus, there was a question that came forward about the overall safety on campus. And we have been pleased to have our SRO program back. They've been very supportive of helping us increase student safety on campus. There was a question that came forward about incidents if a student may bring a controlled substance to campus or perhaps even a weapon to campus. And in all of those cases, we're grateful to have the support of our SROs. If there ever is a report of something like that, we're investigating that right away. We are making sure that our students and their safety is the top priority. And I really appreciate when any member of our community is reaching out to let us know of a concern. Because as soon as you see something or hear something, the right thing to do is to say something. And that helps all of us. On looking at the return to campus, some of our students return to expanded supports like we talked about, our COVID-19 safety protocols, and we had some students returning to new buildings, some to construction, and some to temporary locations even this year. Excuse me. We talk about our facilities. We're grateful to have Measure E support. That was a ballot measure passed in 2014 by our voters to build and improve our facilities. That work is ongoing through 2025, and we're going to talk about some of those exciting projects. The facilities work is really guided by our priorities, which is driven by our principles. You can see on this page, there is a constant cycle that we engage in, which is reviewing our demographic projections. We'll talk about that in a moment as it relates to our budget and enrollment. We look at our facility needs, what our financial analysis is and how we fund projects, and what are the educational standards that we want in the areas where we're doing construction. When we're remodeling or updating a classroom or building new classroom buildings, what are the things that should be a standard element within those learning environments? Those are also driven by the long-range facilities plan recommendations, which again, we'll talk about in just a moment. Prior to my arrival in Fremont, there was a lot of work that went through the process of planning and designing the middle school conversions, and we're very excited about the progress taking place with those projects, thanks to the community support for Measure E. As I mentioned, our long-range facility plan, that is something that has been in place for years. We started up again with revising and updating that plan last spring. We made a collective decision to put a pause on that work as we focused on reopening our schools safely for students and staff. And now that we're reopened, we're beginning that work again to further our analysis and update our long-range facility planning because, as everybody knows, the needs change year over year, as do our circumstances. As we look at our middle school conversion timeline, you can see here that in 2019, Walters became our first school to welcome the sixth grade students. And you can see Horner this year at 2021 was able to open and welcome sixth through eighth grade students. For Hopkins, we expect in the fall of 2022 that they are able to welcome their seventh and eighth grade students. And then in 2023, Hopkins, along with Centerville and Thornton, will be welcoming our sixth through eighth grade students collectively. In specific relation to Hopkins, as the community certainly may know and understand, we were expected to finish work over the summer. That work was delayed for a multitude of reasons. We weren't able to bring our students and staff safely back to Hopkins. We didn't feel that the site was in a condition which was conducive to safety for all parties. So we made the decision to move that campus, the students and the staff, over to Lila Bringhurst, which is a newly constructed elementary school, which was not set to open this year, but the facilities were ready to open. So we were grateful to be able to utilize that space. And the staff and the students and the community have done a great job of being flexible and adjusting. Gratitude as well to our transportation group, who's been there to make sure that our students can be transported from the Hopkins site over to Lila Bringhurst. I know the students and the staff and the community are very excited to get back to their actual Hopkins campus, and we're looking forward to that next fall as well. As we move forward and look at some of the work that's taking place, as I mentioned, Walters was the first conversion school to be completed. You can see on the left-hand side of the screen the renderings, and on the far right of the screen, you can see some of the actual pictures of the completed construction. I was out for a site visit at Walters this year, visiting some classrooms, talking with the principal, met a few of the staff, talked with some students, and it certainly seems like they are enjoying this facility and that it's meeting the needs of the students and the community. Looking at Horner Middle School, again, this year was able to welcome all sixth through eighth grade students to that campus as a new facility. And I've had 3 or 4 visits to Horner. Again, the opportunity to talk with students, to talk with staff. And I think everybody's excited about being in this new facility. It does give us a chance to also remember that as we open up new facilities, there are things that have to be ironed out. We did see a few issues with the HVAC units as we opened this campus at the beginning of the year. I thank our outside contractors and developers for their support, as well as our internal team of HVAC technicians that worked really hard to address those issues. And again, thanks to our students and our staff for their flexibility while those things were ironed out. Even in a new campus, there are things that need to be resolved as we reopen. Looking at the Horner School, there's new classroom buildings, a new kitchen, a new multi-purpose room. We're building locker rooms. We have 2-story science building with general education classes as well, new play fields, and really just a great campus and a great place to be. As we look at Hopkins, you can see on this screen some renderings of what some of the completed buildings may look like and some of the construction that's taking place in the moment. Again, IT upgrades across the campus, HVAC and lighting upgrades, plumbing and restroom enhancements, flooring and ceiling repair in the existing buildings, and you can see the construction of a 2-story classroom building, multi-purpose room, and music classroom building. On this screen, you can see some additional renderings of Hopkins Middle School and some of what the elevation of the buildings might look like. And you can also see some of the actual construction taking place in the moment at Hopkins Middle School. As we look to Centerville, again, my gratitude and appreciation to the students and staff and community there, as they are coexisting this year with a lot of construction. And that's not always the easiest thing to do for anybody involved in the equation. And I want to thank those construction workers, construction managers who are working on the site for helping to keep everything safe thus far. Centerville will be the construction of a 2-story building, modernizations as we described for our other middle school conversions, and drop-off and pickup for Centerville as well. Some of the renderings you can see here, the way the buildings will be designed and the color scheme of what is planned. And you can also see on this slide some of the actual construction progress you can see we're making on that 2-story building for Centerville. It's been very, very exciting to see those construction progress well at Centerville. And again, this will be presented on recorded and posted online along with the presentation. If, for example, on this slide you wanted to click into the top right-hand corner and see a little bit more of the map of the plans for when Centerville is finished. Looking at Thornton Middle School, you can see here on this screen a rendering of what the front of the school will look like at completion. This is new classroom and library and administration buildings, parking drop-off improvements, modernization of buildings like we've talked about, IT infrastructure, and there's been some real exciting progress taking place for Thornton as well. You see in these slides the rendering of what the campus would look like at completion, as well as the play fields in the back of the campus. And you can also see here some of the real-time updates that are happening for our Thornton Middle School project. And it's been very exciting to see those things take place and take shape. When we look at our future considerations and focus areas for our facilities, again, we're going to be looking at our continued work on our long-range facilities plan. We're going to continue to focus on our high-need facility areas. So 2 things that are obviously timely right now is we did receive some questions and comments about the status of our roofs at different schools within Fremont Unified School District. And we are in the process of completing an analysis of which projects would need to come first within that, identifying funding sources, and bringing those recommendations forward. Additionally, we've heard community requests and staff requests and student requests for more outdoor spaces for lunch, very timely related to COVID-19. And we understand that request and we are researching how we can help provide those outdoor covered spaces for lunch. We recognize that with COVID-19, the most ideal thing to be doing would be to be eating outside. Weather, we may not be able to do that as much. And I do want to remind everybody that the Alameda County Public Health and California Department of Public Health does provide that it is permissible to eat indoors, but we recognize it's a little bit better to be eating outdoors. I do want to thank our students and our staff for their adjustments. I described in yesterday's town hall a visit to Niles Elementary this year where I saw the students and the staff doing a great job of adjusting their lunchtime routine. They were eating indoors where needed and outdoors where possible. And the students, even our youngest students, were doing a great job of taking their mask off to eat and remasking as soon as they were done and trying to maximize the physical distance between each other while eating. So it will be a combination of all those strategies and certainly something that we see as an important need for spaces as well. Additionally, we'll be looking at the expansion of transition garden. That is required in part because of an assembly bill passed by the state of California, which requires school districts to expand the age eligibility for transitional kindergarten. For example, currently, students that are born September 2nd through December 2nd are eligible for transitional kindergarten. Over the next few years, go back from December 2nd to February 2nd, then the following year to April 2nd, the following year to June 2nd. So you can see that expansion of the age eligibility will allow for an expansion of our transitional kindergarten programs. Additionally, we're exploring, and I want to highlight that we are exploring, no formal decisions have been made, but we are exploring what full-day kindergarten could look like for Fremont Unified School District. We recognize the benefits that it can provide for our students, but we also recognize that there are facility implications for such an expansion and that there are things that we would need to negotiate with our labor partners and many other logistical items that would need to be ironed out in order to make full day kindergarten a reality for Fremont Unified. But that is on our radar and something that we are exploring. Again, obviously looking at our middle school conversion process and continuing our work with our task force for the Mandarin Immersion Program, the Spanish Dual Immersion Program, and looking at those programs. Also looking at how we can best utilize our bond funds for the remaining bond projects. And also look at our enrollment projections, which takes us to, excuse me, our next topic. Enrollment is a critical area for all school districts in the state of California because it's tied to our funding models. You know, as a professional in education and from a personal perspective, I wish that we didn't tie each student to a funding and revenue amount, but the model in which California funds schools, that's the way we are funded. So that's how we have to analyze the enrollment and also ultimately the attendance. As you see on this screen, this is county level trends. So across the state, what each county is experiencing from 2018 through 2021. And what you can see is the deeper shades of red reflect the highest in enrollment. So for example, in those deep shades of red, you're seeing enrollment in that county drop by -5%. You can see across the state, there's only one exception in the very northern part of California where there's actual enrollment growth. Everywhere else across the state, there is a decline in enrollment. This will likely be the first year that anybody can remember in recent time, and I've been looking at these things for 20 plus years, where we've had a decline in enrollment across the state. So that's something that's very important for us to watch. What does it mean for us locally in Fremont? It means that we make a projection of our enrollment each and every year. So this year, based on our projection, we were at 96, roughly 96% of our projection. So about 4% below. When we look at districts across Alameda County, most districts were 3 to 6% below their projection. So we're on pace with what other districts experienced. And likely some of this decline in enrollment is due to COVID-19 concerns, but maybe not all of it. And we'll have to watch how that trend continues year over year. On this screen in particular, you'll see a significant decrease in elementary age students of over 2,000 students. But in fact, the decrease was not that high because on the next line, you see the number of those students that are enrolled in our virtual program at the elementary level. All combined across the district, we are about 1,200 students below our projection. And that is something that is significant and worth noting, and something that will have an impact on our budget in the out years as well. The reason it ties to our budget is because the state of California and the Alameda County Office of Education mandate that we submit a 3-year budget every time we submit our budget. And so we have to produce our budget for the current year and the next 2 years. The reason we watch that enrollment trend so carefully is because we receive a specific amount of revenue per student, and we don't get funded on our total enrollment. Currently, we get funded on the percentage of students that attend on an average daily attendance. Fremont Unified has had a relatively high average daily attendance rate historically. We expect that to continue. Obviously, this year it is impacted by the pandemic and COVID-19. As we look at our demographic projections and our enrollment projections, we recently brought forward a report from SchoolWorks, which is a demographer that the district has hired to review this data, and was presented to the board. And you can see here the projections from 22-23 all the way through 27-28. When we look at these numbers, we're looking at the generation rate of what's happening for development and homes within Fremont Unified School District. The demographers are looking at the trends and patterns related to birth rates from 5 years ago, and then those students being kindergarten eligible. There's a lot of data that goes into these projections, and again, they are projections. We hope that the decrease in enrollment is not as significant as projected, that perhaps it may off much sooner and maybe even begin to increase again at a healthy and balanced. When we move to more discussions around the budget, it's important to look at where we've been. So for our budget background, I think it's important to note that almost around this time last year, the Alameda County Office of Education was recommending that Fremont Unified cut almost $18 million or come up with the equivalent in revenue enhancements. We worked really hard right away to address the budget issues early last year. And we also received one-time state and federal funding support related to COVID-19. Alameda County then reduced the recommendation for Fremont Unified, and the Board of Education made some tough decisions and approved $7.7 million in reductions for this year. In June, our projected ending fund balance increased from $23.7 million to $44.8 million. In large part, this was due to the one-time dollars that we did not have when we projected our budget at the start of last year. As we look at our fiscal overview in the moment, when we closed the books on last year, the ending fund balance again went up $32 million. And that was in large part due to increasing one-time dollars, to not operating our school sites throughout the year. And that's not why we kept them closed, but as you can imagine, with schools closed, we had less to spend on consumables, less to spend on electricity, and a number of other things that impacted our budget differently than a year where we would be in person. For context, when we look at Fremont Unified School District's budget as a whole, our operating budget expenditures each year are just over $400 million. So it's a very large budget, obviously, for a large organization with a comprehensive set of needs. And we're very mindful of where those dollars are going. We're grateful for the one-time funds that we've received. They require, in many cases, a plan to be written, publicly shared, approved by the board, and submitted to the California Department of Education. Of note, where a lot of our one-time dollars went, we talked about our virtual academy. Now, virtual academy holding 4 to 5% of our student population required a large number of teachers. We started this fall with about 50 to 52, I believe, teachers for our elementary virtual academy. Those were teachers that were not part of our teaching force the year prior or pre-pandemic for in-person instruction. We made the decision to hire these staff in addition to our current staff so that when possible, we could return our elementary students to their home school when they were ready to go back to in-person instruction. I know that was a very important point for many of our community members in August when we returned, and we couldn't make a guarantee that every student would get to go back to their home school. And we still cannot make that guarantee. But what we did do is expend a significant amount of dollars to make sure that we could fund all of those 50 plus teachers to support the virtual academy, which did two things. It met the needs of students who needed a virtual environment, and it designed a structure in which we could, to the extent possible, maximize the amount of students returning to their home school when they were ready to return to in-person instruction. And the one-time dollars from the state and federal government were critical in helping us be able to do that. So what are our next steps fiscally? Well, we're going to build our next year's 22-23 budget. That will be informed by the governor's budget, which should be released in January. Probably final discussions are happening now. I know that the Assembly has released their version of the state budget. And so there's a lot happening in Sacramento with the preparation for that. Ultimately, we won't see the adoption of the state budget until June of the 22, but we'll watch for the governor's proposal in January. We'll see the revision in May. I think it's really important to note right now that the Legislative Analyst Office has reviewed the state's fiscal picture, and the state is looking to be significantly ahead of revenue projections, which is a good thing for education. We are hopefully optimistic. Well, we're cautiously optimistic, and we are hopeful that we do see that increase in state revenue coming down to schools. The Legislative Analyst's Office has recently released a publication outlining that districts may see 2 consecutive years of increased funding in 22-23 and 23-24. We'll have to see if those come to fruition and how the governor decides to dollars within a TK through 12 or post-secondary setting with community colleges included in that. Hopefully, we'll see a lot of those funds coming down to school districts in an ongoing fashion. That being said, there's a legislative process that happens once the governor releases his budget, and we'll see what happens with that through the May revision. Currently, we're in negotiations with all of our bargaining units, and we understand as a district that we need to be doing things to help recruit and retain the best and the brightest teachers for our students and for our community. And it's not only teachers, it's administrators, classified support staff, transportation staff. Across the board, we want to recruit and retain the best employees for Fremont Unified. We'll continue to look at how we address our high need facility areas, and we're going to continue to focus on learning. There's a phrase out there in the world I don't really agree with, which is learning loss. I like to refer to it, as many people do, as unfinished learning. And we'll be using our local assessments to establish where more intervention is needed. Also, we'll have our state assessments taking place in the spring, as they historically have as well. We'll continue to focus on our equity, diversity, and inclusion outcomes. And one of the questions that came forward from the community was related to what is equity and what are some of these terms that we're talking about. And so I think it's important to recognize that when we're looking at equity, we're talking about a broad range of things, and likely within the community, there's a broad interpretation of what that means. And so what we're looking at here is how do we identify these policies and systemic issues that are barriers to impacting learning, that are increasing achievement gaps, or that are impeding access issues. And those are the things that we're trying to work very hard to resolve. As we look at our current status, there's some good news and there's some difficult challenges ahead as well. So we, as well as many other school districts across the state and almost all school districts in the Bay Area, are impacted by a statewide teacher and staffing shortage. Again, it's not just classroom teachers. That's been a shortage that's been coming and building over the last 6 to 8 years. And it's certainly shown itself in greater magnitude in light of the pandemic and in our current times. But we're also seeing staffing shortage in classified areas. And we would love to see our community who may have interest in filling some of those positions looking for ways to join us as part of our Fremont Unified team. And you can find information on our website about openings, whether it's for a teacher position, substitute position, or a classified position. As I mentioned earlier, we're adjusting to different levels of learning and also different levels of social emotional preparedness. As I mentioned in the beginning, the pandemic and distance learning, it's not a shared experience for everybody in the sense that everybody's experience is not identical. We're all going through the pandemic together, but our experiences and how we manage that and traverse that landscape can be very unique. So we're looking at unfinished learning for students. We're looking at needs for social emotional support, thus the increase for counselors. We've increased our areas of intervention. And we do see students that are coming back to us after having not been in school for a year and a quarter or a third. And there are academic gaps that we're working to address. And there's also behavioral gaps that need to be addressed as well. And so I'm very grateful for our parent and guardian community for partnering with us in that work, and especially to our school site staff who is working day in and day out to address both the academic and the behavioral issues that are there for students. And it's not only negative, there are a wide number of cases where there's great work happening and great success happening as well. But we want to make sure that our lens is focused on all students all of the time. Additionally, Fremont Unified, like many school districts, have become really a micro public health agency in light of the pandemic. and the responsibility that's been put on school districts, understandably so. And what that looks like for Fremont Unified is we are hosting vaccine clinics through partnership with great community organizations. Howlers has been an excellent partner with us since last winter. And this year we increased a partnership with Safeway. We've had support from Bay Area Community Health, Washington Hospital, and a number of other agencies that have helped provide access to the vaccine. Other areas that we would consider ourselves a micro public health agency, we're not providing regional or statewide guidance. We're receiving that from Alameda County Public Health and California Department of Public Health. But we are providing PCR COVID testing once a week across 46 school sites, plus some additional work sites. We're doing contact tracing. We've had to hire significant staff for that. We're doing testing related to state mandates for staff, where staff have to either be vaccinated or tested weekly. And we're doing a number of things to make sure that we can keep our extracurricular activities going successfully as well, in accordance with guidelines from the County Scholastic Federation for our sports programs. We have also increased our AP test offerings this year, which is a great thing for us to be doing. I thank our site staff that are responsible for that, as well as our district staff and the instructional services team that have helped with that. Fremont Unified is, again, for the first time in probably 15 to 18 years, hosting SATs in Fremont Unified School District schools again, which I think is a good thing for our community and our students. Also, I think it's a great point to recognize that we've improved our fiscal picture dramatically from where we were 12 months ago. We have that improved fiscal picture and reserves over the next 3 years of our budget. And again, we're in an important process of negotiating with our labor groups. We've been able to make new textbook adoptions, and we have those as part of our budgets in the out years as well. We've had to put those off year after year to where we're in some cases in places where we're being produced for a certain curriculum adoption. And so we're excited about being able to update those learning materials for our students and for our staff. And for me, on a selfish level, being back in person, my first year as superintendent in Fremont was under the cloud of distance learning. And being back in person, this is my first year being superintendent with everybody back on campus. And I've been able to conduct 36 different site visits this year. I'm hoping by the start of the winter break, I will have completed a site visit to every program at Fremont Unified. And those site visits have just been incredibly important in learning more about the culture of Fremont Unified, learning more about the microculture of each school site, being able to talk with the staff members, talk with parents. That's where I'm able to learn what are the needs of a school, what are the desires of a community. And those site visits have just been incredible. And with each site visit, I'm continually impressed by the work of our staff, the things that our students are doing. You can see this picture on the left-hand side of your screen. This was a visit, maybe the first or second week of school that I made to Blake Cow Elementary. Had the pleasure to talk with two, I can't remember if it was TK or kindergarten students. They were working with Legos, and it was a prime example to spend time with students, to see where our students are academically, social, emotionally, and see what we can be doing to support our staff as well. So again, if you're interested in joining a part of Fremont Unified School District, a couple of things you could be looking for. You could look at the bottom link here on this screen for opportunities to work with Fremont Unified. Again, we do have staffing shortages, and we are looking especially for substitutes. If you might have a bachelor's degree, a background in teaching, an interest in teaching, there's some tests that you may need to take, but we'd love to have more substitute teachers. Or if you're looking for something on the classified side, we're looking for subs there as well. On the top link, there are a number of committees that are looking for representatives. And if they're not looking for representatives, it's also an opportunity for you to view some of the important work and discussions that's happening within Fremont Unified School District in different committees, whether it's our facilities committee, our bond oversight committee, our wellness committee, our budget advisory task force. There's a number of areas where you can watch and see what may be going on. Lastly, I would share that if you recognize some of the pictures throughout the presentation, it's likely because you're following us on some of our social media channels. Fremont Unified uses our Facebook page and a Twitter account. I myself personally, when I'm out visiting sites, will usually post pictures or information about the visit on my Twitter account, which is at CJ and it's just a way for you to see where some of the visits are taking place, some of the exciting things that are happening in the district. We invite you to follow us there. And of course, if you have a question that wasn't addressed in the town hall, if you have a concern that you don't feel like has been addressed, please feel free to reach out. I do my best to respond to parent emails within 24 to 48 hours. There may be times where I direct the question to one of our staff that can give you a more timely and direct answer, but we certainly want to be engaged with our community. And if there's something that you think we need to be knowing about, please feel free to reach out and let us know. Lastly, anybody who might be checking this out, we are having our last town hall tomorrow, 6 to 7 p.m. We invite you to join for that as well if you're interested. On behalf of the Board of Education, our executive cabinet, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I appreciate that you've taken the time to be with us, or if you're watching this as a recording, thank you for taking the time to watch this and being involved in the things that are happening for Fremont Unified School District. It's an opportunity for us to share information, and of course, we always love to receive information as well. As we move into returning from break and into the spring, in a very structured and scaffolded way, we can increase some of that access to campus. And I look forward to seeing more and more of our parents and community throughout our school during some of the site visits. It's been a true pleasure to be out at the school sites this year, whether it's been visiting our preschool program at Glenkler, whether it's been visiting one of our high school programs or middle school programs, whether it's visiting a Friday night football game under the stadium lights at TAC, or last week had a great chance to go over to Irvington High School and check out the drama production for A Wrinkle in Time. What a fantastic performance that was by the students, from the stagecraft to the performance to the behind the scenes work. Just an incredible show. So it's been fantastic to be in, around, and about Fremont Unified School District this year. I look forward to doing more of it in the spring. And I wish to each and every one of you a happy holiday filled with joy and the things that bring happiness to you and your loved ones. Thank you for being here, and take care.